All right, everybody, welcome to Dad Talk. Today it's Sunday. Hope you're all doing good, waking up, coffee. I know it's a little early for you guys over there in California. How y'all doing today?
Great, making progress. And for an
Good.
old man like me, that's saying a lot.
Yes, sir. Guys, if you're not familiar, we're continuing on the series, alienationacademy.org. We have partnered. These guys have created a course to help people through their family law battles, and we are getting some amazing results trying to get the attorneys and the experts out. These people that are paying 10, 20, 30, 50, $100,000. We had two gentlemen. It was just random gentlemen last week that both said they had paid $250,000 in their family law battle and still didn't have their kids, guys. That is crazy, the amounts of money that people are spending. But we're wanting to put some focus on this, and would love for you to come and join the course and give us your feedback. But while we're leading up to that, one of the topics I was thinking about leading off with today, and it can definitely relate to our calls, is the banning of TikTok. Have you guys heard about this? If you go on now, you're not allowed to go on TikTok. And that's kind of a bad thing for this movement. If it wasn't for these social media outlets, that's what we're doing right now. It's been one of the best gifts that we've had to help get the word out. And now this conglomerate, this big platform is gone. I'm curious your thoughts on it and what the effects are going to be.
Well, from my perspective, I think it just shows that people need to be armed. They need to be not literally, but figuratively armed with some form of education. If you don't have a platform to express what's going on in your family law case, you really should be prepared enough to go into court and make that same kind of rally. So those are my thoughts. Bill, what about you?
It's all about censorship, and it's things that are being said on TikTok are not. They're not. They defy the national narratives, and especially in family courts, because I've seen a few things there which are telling the truth about the family courts. I don't think the people who are in the elite crowd who's running the show here, I don't think they like those messages.
I'm torn on it, guys, because I do understand. And, Bill, I know you're very familiar with the Chinese government. So what they're saying is, like, when you sign up on TikTok, you're giving them the ability to access all kinds of information on you. This goes a little bit further, though, because the one thing that really ticks me off TikTok. Anyway, that platform, I didn't know, like, I use CapCut to do my video editing with. It got banned too. It wasn't just TikTok. It was multiple things.
It's all ByteDance products. It's all ByteDance products.
Yeah.
Got brought up in the fold. So
that is crazy, man. But I mean, so I understand, like, we got to be very careful with the information that's getting out there. How much of that do you think is actually the problem here? Or do you think it's just wanting to take people's voices away from them because they're getting a little too loud?
Well, I personally am interested in the fact that we challenge the fact that all this data is supposedly streaming over to China in the interest of national security and or individual sovereignty and security. But nobody's questioning the fact that our very government's doing it to us every day. That's the part that gets me.
Yeah, guys, I got some comments coming over here on Instagram. Sorry that it won't allow me to pull them up, but I'll read them to you. OG Paul on here said, my ex cut off contact between me and my daughter 5 years ago, made her not want to talk to me. And when I went to court, I didn't receive anything. How common of a scenario is that, guys, that you're seeing where that they get cut off and now the child doesn't want to talk to them all these years later because they've been programmed to think, this is a bad person?
Well, 10 years ago, after a long career, I discovered this problem called parental alienation. Didn't really know what it was, but I'm a research person. I'm not a mental health person. So I spent a full year of my life going around the world, New Zealand, Australia, Europe, taking a very hard look at this problem. And I looked at it through a number of lenses, and one certainly was the family courts, which is where most people with these problems go. So this issue of contact refusal, defiance, and disrespect children are expressing towards an available and loving parent is really become an epidemic. I couldn't begin to tell you the real numbers, but I've heard numbers as high as 300 million people in the world are right now experiencing this problem. In other words, families.
How many is that, Bill, again?
300 million. I've heard
Yeah.
estimates that high. Now, it could be higher for all we know, but what it seems correlated with in my work is the changes, political changes that have led to a huge shift in human tolerance and human emotions, such as the forced embrace of gender ideologies, especially, I would have to say, the gender identity issues. The biggest correlate with this is the destruction of the family and the interest of political crowds around the world that have successfully put the stake in the heart of the extended family. And when you do that, you've removed the support group that was the glue that held civilization together for 7 million years. And that's a big change. And so the consequences of that are what we're seeing in a new class of people globally who are angry, frustrated, self-esteem problems, insecure. And so they export that anger to other people through the proxy of their children. So it's a huge problem. And a part of the solution, which we talk about in our classes, is somehow finding a way to undo some of the damage that's been done through political means that basically are interested in controlling us. And the biggest thing I see is the restoration of the family, putting the family first, because that is where everything happens that's successful for us. Our role models for relationships comes from the family. Our attachment comes from the family. Virtually everything that's necessary, all the fruit that's necessary to ensure quality of life and success in life comes out of the family. And that's basically been marginalized. And that's what accounts for this huge problem.
Now, I don't want to butcher this. When talking about that 300 million, I've talked to psychologists before in the past that would show me like how they come up with some of these numbers. And one had said the numbers is around 200,000 parents that are alienated. But it was much, much more on the other side. But he said they are experiencing alienation tendencies. He was like, to be fully alienated, it was like the kids are gone and there's no hope. There's no coming back. I thought maybe you could further expand when you say 300 million, like what are we looking at with those numbers?
Just in the United States, and this has been validated quite recently. I can't remember the exact publication that came out that did the study, but there's the estimates are 22 million just in the United States. That's incredible. And then I think it mentioned 8 million in Canada. Right. So
it's just 300 million total. That is the population of the United States.
Well, I'm talking about 300 million globally.
Worldwide.
Yeah, I know.
Globally.
Yeah, in every country, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much the population of our country.
Well, if there's 7 billion people in the world, I mean, you can do the math. It's a significant number, and it's going to continue to grow because of the what I had just discussed just a minute ago.
Yeah. What all is at stake? I mean, well, I know what all is at stake, but how do you think they have systematically started trying to tear apart that nuclear family, and when do you think it started?
It started primarily, I would have to say, if in the United States, it was an agenda that began probably back as early as Margaret Sanger in the early 1900s. And she was a social worker, very much involved in the abortion issue of her time. And it then became part of the progressive movement that was embraced by Sigmund Freud and his descendants, which are the mental health people. And then it was when people realized that that controlling other people is easier if you can remove constraints such as the family, which opposes central power and central rule and that sort of thing. So it really didn't really take shape completely until the 1960s and 70s, when because of the Vietnam War and concomitantly with the war on poverty, the taxes were raised dramatically at that time, and it forced a financial decision for families, which had up until that time been one wage earner families, nuclear families, extended families, into a situation where they had to place mom into the workplace, which meant that now you have two genders sharing one gender role. You have, for the first time in human history, men and women both competed with one another for livelihood, and you placed the children and your elders, the rest of your family. For the first time in history, you delegate away the care of your kids to daycare, and you delegate away the care of elders to long-term care. Now, if you don't think that isn't going to have significant consequences for people, you better think again, because that is exactly where we are now, and that trend has continued. And of course, it's very unpopular for people to take a position against the destruction of the extended family, because that's exactly what they've been looking to achieve for at least since the 1960s, and they've done a really good job of it.
I love the way you put that. I mean, I knew that, but the way you put, you got these parents that are competing and trying to play both roles. And that really is, we're seeing all the problems that's coming together with that. I read one of his comments earlier, but OG Paul, he's got another one on here. He said, I keep sending gifts on special occasions and send her emails because that is the only way I am allowed to contact her, but she doesn't respond. I mean, that's so sad. Here it is. He's making that effort, knowing that it's not going to be reciprocated. Outside of that, for these parents that aren't allowed to have contact, or they're being alienated and they have no way to communicate with their children, what is something, guys, you could recommend? Like, I remember in the past, I would say, keep a journal, put something out there so that they know that you're thinking about it. When I had John Mast on my show that Thanksgiving, and I asked him, I was like, John, when you weren't able to see your kids, were you doing anything? Were you making videos? Did you write a journal? And he's like, I have wrote a journal. I've been writing a journal for a very long time. And that morning I found out that he had been murdered, guys. That was the first thing I did, is I contacted his family and said, you need to go look for those journals. I was like, John's got it in words. He spoke to those kids. You need to go find it. And they found it immediately. And but what's something that you would suggest to these parents that aren't able to contact, that don't have that time right now? It's being rejected. Is there something that you would suggest to them in the meantime to make sure, later on, that the kids know they was thinking about them?
Yeah, well, get into Alienation Academy.
Yeah, early on we used we still use what's called a proxy interventions. It's a strategy whereby we find friends, families, or strangers that are given a script, who happen to be compassionate and empathetic towards the issue of a parent who's going through this problem. And so they become their proxy to intercept the child, maybe after school or somewhere in a public space, and to engage them in a conversation. We've done a lot of this, and it's had some interesting results. One of the things you get from an interaction like that, when a stranger approaches your child and says, "Hey, Johnny, I know your mom. How are you doing? It's good to see you." And so we script it out. And so children, we know how to exploit their vulnerabilities. And since we can do that, we can get a lot of valuable information with this stranger talking to your child, which then comes back to us. And oftentimes that even lays the groundwork for an intervention, such as rescuing that child or confusing the child. One of the things I always recommend in learning theory is, we talk about this a lot. One of the things you want to do is help to create the circumstances that confuses your child, because the child is so thoroughly indoctrinated into a mythology that's been constructed by that other parent, that it's very hard to reach them. And so this is one way. We have other ways too. I mean, we have a number of ways we use proxy interventions. And matter of fact, we just used 2 in the last 2 months, and we actually rescued 2 children just through the proxy interventions alone.
So, and I mentioned that Matt said, get into Alienation Academy, obviously. But let me ask this about the course. Outside of doing what needs to be done in the family court to get them the access back, what has that course done for like the parents overall with their mood, their depression, and everything? Because what it sounds like, you get obviously you got somebody that's being kept from their kids, somebody's taking all of their money, and they feel like nothing they do is working. By the time they get over there to you guys, I'm sure they're very emotionally charged. They're angry, they're sad, they're every emotion on the board, and we know that we got to get them to come back down and get back to, some type of normalcy in their life. Can you say any of the effects or talk to the effects that you've seen the course have for these parents that are very emotional when they get to you?
Oh, every single parent has gone through a massive fundamental change. And I think even, we don't have any love loss for the American Psychological Association and the damage they've done in these cases. But the reality is that even the APA has considered depression as no longer a pathology in many ways. So, the answer to depression, which we all face, the loss of our living children, it stimulates a lot of anxiety and depression in your life. Really the best way to handle that is to get busy, get to work, put your mind and effort to something that's going to make a difference. And that's, I think, a lot of the key. Bill, you know it better than I do, but I think that's a lot of the key as to why we see these significant and massive changes in the attitudes, behaviors, and general appearance of people who have joined the courses.
What we find is whenever you have depression or a maladaptive emotional state like that, the best medicine is to find activities to compete with that depression. So when you look at behaviorally, when you observe a person who's experiencing depression and despondency, their activity level tends to be low. And that's basically what we see in all these parents when they first come to us. So what first thing we do, and we tell you this in our first class, is what the best way to deal with a situation where you're feeling despondent and depressed is, as Matt said, get busy. So when you are working on solutions rather than just joining groups and commiserating with other people who are going through the same thing, that doesn't accomplish anything. All that does is just reinforce the problem.
I agree.
So what we do instead is we focus on solutions. We will not sit there and hold your hand and cry with you. It's not necessary. We'd rather you get busy and have hope, which is why we call the organization Hope in Darkness, because we realize when people join, hope is really what they're looking for, and that's exactly what they're going to get. Once they get into the first class, we get all kinds of comments from people once they start, because they don't know what to, like anybody, they don't know what to expect until you actually try it. So as soon as they get into the class, it seems to be a real change in their emotion. They tend to be brighter, more active, more engaged, more articulate. We see a lot of changes in our parents very quickly, emotionally.
I was going to say, man, that's something I have to be mindful of myself, doing what I do, sitting at a desk and reading family law cases all day long. I have to remind myself when I start getting in that spot, my thing is going to the gym. I'm like, go over there and lift some heavy weight, and it'll suck so bad that you won't be able to think about this other situation that sucks really bad. And it's effective, man. But if you're not keeping yourself busy, guys, and you just sit back, all you do is dwell on that. It's poison. Really what it is. It's poison. And it can be hard to pull yourself out of that. But as soon as you start, you'll be glad.
Well, that's a good analogy in there somewhere, I guess, Eric. that, the courses themselves, the ones that you've curated with us, and we've made a lot of we've put a lot of heavy weight on that bar for Dad Talk today.
I
There's a
like
lot
that.
of courses in there.
All right,
And
guys.
we're going to work out your mental muscles, frequently through the courses. It's a lot of material. It's about 51 hours of content, that's going to teach you a myriad of strategies, and not just cheesy strategies. These are strategies that not only are very effective in your family law case, but in many ways can affect your attitude and your approach to life in general. Um, and we've built all those tools into it. So I like that weightlifting workout
Oh yeah.
analogy.
Man, most of these guys are going through this situation. They feel like nobody understands them and they are just so ready to get it out. And it's almost like they emotionally vomit on everybody they meet because they're trying to find somebody. Do you see as they're taking this case or taking this course, is that something that it kind of goes from, I got to tell somebody to, oh, I'm working at it.
Yeah, I
I'm
got to
trying
do
to take
something.
that.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
doing. Yeah, yeah, without a doubt. And that usually occurs after the first 100 series. Once they get learning theory, they get it figured out. And the data collection is really where um, the rubber meets the road, and they start gathering up data that becomes their, when Bill and I interact with parents one-on-one, their language changes. They're speaking a different language now. They're talking about learning theory, behaviorism, and operant conditioning, and all the things that we deliver through the courses, to Dad Talk today. Those parents are learning a new language, and it's a language that's been around for a very long period of time, and we're just giving them the tools to be able to articulate it and communicate in a way that's reasonable and common sense.
I know something I wanted to ask Bill about. One of the common things that these guys are told that are in that emotional state is to go find a therapist and a counselor. How do you feel about these therapists and counselors with this family law stuff? Do you find that it helps or in some cases makes it worse?
Well, our experience is they have been, they're not the right tool. They're the wrecking ball in many of these cases, since they've had pretty much free reign with the family courts since the 1960s. What they have done is they've established a reputation for being the informers to the courts, and of course the lawyers and the judges embrace that. So the problem is it's non-directive, client-centered. The approach in what we call mental health therapy. It's done behind a closed door in a room, and it's talk. So it fails to look at the things that are most important. Wouldn't you think it would be more important to be able to see and to be able to hear in real time the expressions of a child, their behavior, and be able to record that behavior in such a way that you can now start to establish the patterns that can be measured and provide the court the urgency that's necessary to be able to see that there's a real serious problem here that has to be changed. Behind a closed door, the best that's ever going to come out of that conversation is an opinion. And when a person expresses an opinion, all opinions are based on talk. Talk creates the circumstance of interpretation. And when you have an individual who's interpreting what's being said, bias is 9 times out of 10 going to be imposed on whatever the opinion is. So, and that's exactly what we see. And the biases that are coming out, and the danger of the mental health community is they're giving people labels, especially when they get involved in deep therapies and then the evaluations, which are using an inventory of tests, such as the one everybody seems to know most popular is the MMPI. It's a personality inventory. It's totally irrelevant to the needs of your case. Mental health doesn't understand this, but in learning theory, nobody would ever use a projective test or these cognitive tests that they're using. because they're irrelevant to the circumstances of whether or not you are a fit and qualified parent. Mental health does not have the tools to be able to look at this, and they don't. None of the courts, until we came into them, were looking where they needed to look. We've redirected the courts to look at the parent skills. And so since all parents aren't the same, they don't all have the same capacities, the same skill sets, we then are in a position where we can change the entire court structure from an adversarial position to an advocacy position. So we advocate for the restoration of the total family dynamic by looking at two parents who are operating with these kids, one parent who's fit and qualified and the other who isn't. So what we advocate is, let's fix the parent who is having parenting skill deficiencies, so that at some point in the future, on a conditional basis, we can restore a family dynamic and make that work. And that's one of the secrets as to why we prevail in court and your lawyer can't, because your lawyer's clueless about this stuff. Everyone, especially the mental health people.
Why do you think so many parents are pointed in that direction, though, Bill?
I'm sorry. You broke up for me.
I said, why do you think so many parents are pushed in that direction of the therapists and the mental health guys?
Well, because society, like all societies around the world, are indoctrinated to believe in things that where there is monetary value that's pushing that agenda. The agenda has been pushed by the mental health community. And the minute they began to feel the heat of competition from people like me and Skinner and Harlow and Wolpe and all the great people in the golden age of real psychology, they wanted to push us out of the way, because what would take them months and years to do, we could do in a week. So behaviorism took a back seat. Of course, they all claim to know behaviorism, but they don't, because, I mean, they've never really done any research or experiments or anything of that nature in that field. They don't even know what spatial conditioning is for the most part, which is extremely important to understand if you're going to be able to change behavior of kids who are in contact refusal. So because the nature of humans is we all are copycats. You know, we listen to what we hear. Others do. We copy those behaviors. And so we, through time, we've learned that the descendants of Sigmund Freud are people that we should respect, and their opinions are important. But in this arena, their opinions are poison. They're toxic. And we see it every single day. Parents are given labels such as borderline personality disorder or paranoid schizophrenia or whatever it happens to be. And it's totally irrelevant to the question that's large in the court, which is what we ask. And we set up a standard, and we measure each parent against that same standard, which is a parenting standard. Don't you think that would work better than a personality inventory in court?
You would think so.
You would think.
And Eric, just to clarify, we don't, in its application in family court, therapists are the wrong application. That's not to say that if a parent gets benefit from going and sitting down and talking about their problems with a therapist, that they shouldn't do that. I mean, there's value in that. Some people, it works great to sit down. But remember, you're sitting down for your own benefit. You're telling your own story, and you're getting the relief is coming to you. Those aren't the circumstances as it relates to families or children. It's a third party interjecting themselves to evaluate someone who is not you, someone whom they don't really have a relationship with, who they don't often see, except, as Bill described, circumstances, in a dimly lit room behind a closed door, to have that child relate their lived experience over the last 6 months in a 1-hour session. And they fill the room with distractions such as toys and try to manipulate these observations out of the child. It doesn't work. It's the wrong tool. But again, we're not denigrating all therapists. If you need a counselor or a therapist, by all means, and that's all you've got available to you at the moment, and it works and it's effective and it'll keep you out of a depressive state, then by all means go seek, that kind of interaction. But don't expect them to know what to do in family court, nor the attorneys, because
As my
none of them
colleague,
understand behavior.
And those
right,
attorneys will gladly act like a therapist because that's
Oh,
ours.
absolutely. Yeah.
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 right.
Tell me all about it. Time starts now.
And just to interject, as my colleague always says, the one thing about mental health, and he was a clinical psychologist, which was odd for the two of us to be together. But he always says the one thing that the mental health people are good at is empathy. So if you need empathy and you're willing to spend $300 an hour for it, go for it. I think there's cheaper means, but the big problem is that, like everything else in life, we create cults and belief systems, and so society has basically the mental health has become a belief system that just about everybody believes in. And in spite of the fact it has its major flaws.
Got a two-part comment here from Carla Mall. She said, as alienated grandparents, a kind deputy sheriff suggested we mail gift cards to our own address whenever we have thoughts to send something to our grandchildren in another state. We had been threatened with harassment by the county attorney if we continued to ship gifts to our grandkids. We also have journals for each of them that other family know of for them. Man, this makes me so upset because grandparents get alien. Yeah. There's a whole other side of the family. I mean, most of the time the focus is going to be on mom or dad, but there is a whole other side of that family that wants to give these children love. One of the cases that comes to me, guys, it was just 2 years ago. This case came to me. This father found out that his son, who had cancer, 14-year-old, had 2 weeks left to live. And he found out about it through Facebook. And when he went to see if he could go see his kids or his kid, because it fell under mom's vacation time with custody, she was allowed to keep him away. And he went and got an emergency order, and they had to fight. After like 3 different court visits and everything, finally the grandparents on Father's Day were allowed 1 hour to go spend with their grandson, who did not know he was dying, because he said, if this was to come, don't tell me. I don't want to spend my last days, wondering, am I dead yet? Am I dead yet? So they had 1 hour to go spend with him and tell him goodbye without saying goodbye. And this was so loving grandparents, guys. Such great when I was growing up, I was at my grandparents' house more than I was my parents at times, and they have no rights. Maybe talk about how this affects grandparents, and is there anything in this course as grandparents that they would be able to take?
Yeah, it's effective for all branches of the family, and that's really the central message, is that the extended family is important. But I wanted to comment, first of all, what kind of society do we live in that does not allow a grandparent to bestow a gift upon their grandchild? What kind of sickness are we experiencing as a society that has drilled us down, devolved us to a point where an unrelated party, for all intents and purposes, the grandparents didn't divorce the other parent, has been put in a circumstance where a law enforcement division is telling them, don't go to the house because you might be subjected to a crime, grandparents, for bestowing gifts upon your grandchildren. Instead, send them to yourselves. That shows that our society is really, really sick at the moment. And we've got to make it better. This is a huge, huge problem. And that goes to the 22 million in the United States, Eric, because what that number enunciates is that there are a number of relationships directly impacted by parental alienation, to include extended family. And then my part in closing here, I just want to say that we've got a mother in the northern part of the United States who kind of bridges both of these scenarios. She herself has cancer. This is her second round with brain cancer. She was taking food items, clothing items, things that the children needed because they were clearly being denied by dad, in this case. She was told not to go to the house, and she was told that it would be too traumatic for the children to witness their mother's passing. so the court cut off all communication. Who does that? It's disgusting.
They have no heart, man.
This is the world we live in.
The courts enable child abuse. That's what they do. Our most people don't realize, and of course the lawyers will never tell you this, the mental health people are clueless again, is that your fight isn't with your ex, it's with the court. That's what we do. We understand how to manipulate courts using behavior modification techniques, propaganda, manipulation, whatever's necessary, to change the behavior of the court so that the court feels the pain of the urgency that's necessary to change the situation in order to bring about a result where the children basically are rescued. And of course, you have to understand, going back to the grandparents we were just talking about a minute ago, this is true of all the people. There's a pattern of behavior which we've seen, because we know this. We've seen more of this than anybody out there, more than I'm certain more than Gottlieb or Childress or any of them. We're just not we just prefer not to be as visible as these people. But we've seen thousands of parents. And one thing that's common to every single abusive parent is that they need, for their own reasons, since they have such horrible self-esteem issues and anger issues, angry at themselves, that they need, like all people, to share that anger with other people. So they export that anger to other people and bringing pain and suffering to them. And in the case of the grandparents, this is a way of that person having a feeling of being able to get a benefit. And the benefit is that they can share their pain and suffering with another person who now suffers just like they do. And this is part of the problem. It's really in the area of sexual drive system called sadistic behavior, where a sadistic person enjoys exporting pain and suffering to another person. And so this is exactly what's going on with all of these people. They get a real serious benefit, which maintains the strength of their behavior of exporting pain and suffering to other people, and they know that hurts that other person.
Maybe 'cause we have a lot of grandparents that follow. I'm curious, like, what are some specifics where this course could really help them, and not just help them as a grandparent, but it would arm them with the knowledge to be there for their child as well.
Well, it's like anything, the more you know about it, the more you've been exposed to it, the more you have a solution to the problem, the
Right.
better off you're going to be. And, it's not like we're expecting everybody to, um, learning theory is very important in day-to-day life. But we're not expecting everyone to be able to regurgitate Bill's words exactly.
Right.
What we're hoping through the courses is to train people enough in the understanding of what is the river flowing below, that gives them enough information to be able to articulate in their own words, in their own circumstances, how and where to apply learning theory. So I think, I'm sorry, it's kind of a chopped up version, but the grandparents absolutely would benefit by knowing more about what the circumstances are that the parents in this case and the children are facing as a result of family court. And then through those learnings and those teachings, they'll start to be able to formulate their own strategies on how to interact or possibly make a difference in the life of their grandchild. And it's important that these children need as many people as possible around them, in any way possible, to change these behaviors. It's a cry for help is really what the children are doing. You've put children in a position where they have to choose their attachments, that they didn't have to choose those attachments before. They just loved other people. They love their father, they love their mother, they love their grandparents, aunts, cousins. It was hopefully a very happy, connected family for them. And then all of that ended when it went into family court. And the family court is very efficient at destroying all of those relationships for the child. So then the child has to choose, which one am I going to choose today that's going to keep my basic needs met, and what price do I have to pay to conform to that, to make sure that this person on the other end who's training me to reject is going to be satisfied. So
just remember, solutions come out of explanations. And what our courses do, they provide the explanations that are necessary as a first step if you're actually going to solve this problem. You're not going to solve it with behind a closed door talking to a stranger. That just is not going to happen. It's counterintuitive. It's actually lunatic to do that. And the problem is that the office of a mental health person becomes an extension of the experience field that's maintaining the strength of the very behavior you're trying to change. Well, how stupid is that? But that's what the courts order in every case when they order mental health people. And the mental health people are clueless, and certainly the lawyers are, and the judges are. I mean, they don't know what they're doing. It's a clown circus in the family courts, and we're the ones have to go in and bring sanity and structure and reason and accountability to that court.
When did the family courts very first start getting on your radar, Bill?
About 10 years ago. And when I saw this problem, I didn't really understand it. Who knows what parental alienation is? Right. It's not something you ever really want to even deal with, let alone know about. But when I did discover it, I realized that it's a real serious problem. I know there's a lot of groups out there trying to discredit the whole idea of parental alienation, which is just foolish. It's beyond belief stupid. They don't have the data to support what they're saying. They have no idea what's going on here. We do. When you can establish through research methods, which we use, which nobody else does, a pattern of behavior that's well established, and we know the behaviors statistically because we have tons of notes on not just a small sample, but a very large sample of thousands of parents. So the one to another, the issues are identical. So this is something that is going to be, as I said, it's going to become it's going to continue to grow. It's not going to get any better until people wake up and understand what it is we're trying to tell them. And what we're trying to tell them is this is a global problem that's caused by political decisions that need to be changed. We need to somehow restore the family. That's the most important thing that's going to be a constraint against the future of this parental alienation problem.
So, Bill, you say about 10 years ago, but you know, and you're in psychology. Did you have any idea that the courts were this bad? And what was that process like for you as you start learning more about it and how it actually operates?
What was astonishing to me was when I looked at it through the lens of the courts. It didn't matter whether it was New Zealand, Australia, UK, Canada, or US. The courts behaved exactly the same. It was incompetence beyond belief. Because they're being fed information which is irrelevant to the court, and you can't operate or solve problems if you're given irrelevant information. Say mental health people were weighing in, and they were coming up with all kinds of goofy ideas about what was causing the problem. None of it was rational, and as a consequence, what we saw was just about every court in the world was following the same template, and the courts basically set themselves up to decide based on the conflict, not on the needs of the children, but on the basis of the conflict between the parents, which parent was going to win a case and take home the kids as a primary custodian. Well, why would you run a court to deal with an issue as sensitive and as important to human civilization as a family in an adversarial way? It doesn't make any sense to me. And so that's where we began to see this problem is it was consistent from one court to another. So there's two reasons for that. One, it's the cult that supports it, the belief system, the mental health cult. And the second thing is the money that the courts get through Title 4D in the US and certainly other countries. We hear this just yesterday in South Africa that the courts there are benefiting financially from these cases, and that's why they don't want to let them go. So you get on a treadmill and you never get off. Well, if you want to get off, you're going to have to change the way you're doing it.
I've never heard that, but that makes sense, because what I hear is South Africa, it's pretty bad over there.
It's one of the worst. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Most corrupt.
Yeah. How much of this do you think rests on the judges' shoulders? Because I have seen some crazy judges, and you never know what you're going to get. They don't all operate the same.
But
go ahead. Sorry.
All of it.
All of it. Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah. Lauren Cody Jackson said, maybe since we have an administration that has dealt with judicial injustice as a weapon, this would be a good time to unveil how widespread it is. Are you guys optimistic about what's about to happen, or do you think it's a good opportunity to finally get some sunshine in?
No, not at all. I think the problem we have is that the courts don't follow the law anyway. It doesn't matter. You can't work. You're never going to solve this problem top down. It just isn't going to happen.
No.
All movements have to come from the bottom up. It's got to be a groundswell of thousands and millions of people who are in these situations, and we have them in the U.S., that can come together as a force to overwhelm the courts and to and make the change, based on creating that power. Nobody has that power right now, and you're not going to change laws in the state legislature and hang out in the U.S. Congress and try to create some kind of a change in the laws. It's not going to change this. This is ingrained. There's too many layers of incompetence that actually has formed a belief system that they actually believe in their own myths. And so now you've got a situation that it's impervious to change. It's not going to change.
It's too deep.
But we can change it, and that's what we're doing. That's why the whole purpose of what we are doing is to create a movement and to help to organize that movement, and not to run it, but to organize it and to get people at the ground level to overwhelm the courts with a new strategy, one they haven't seen before. So that means in the world today, from what I can see, there's only two ways to do it: the court way and our way, and that's it. You don't have any other choice. If you want to go the court way, go for it. Get your checkbook ready and get your bank loans ready, because you're going to need them for the lawyers who can't explain.
Like ticks on a dog.
Yep.
The movement needs to be like ticks on a dog. Suck the blood out of the animal. A thousand ticks at a time.
Yeah, none of these lawyers can explain behavior. I mean, how are you going to win if you can't create an explanation? And you cannot just dump this in the lap of a stranger and delegate it to them and expect anything to change. It's not. You've got to put some work and effort in if you're serious about getting your kids back. If you're not, then go hire a lawyer. It'll be entertaining, to say the least.
So many people think that's the only option.
Yeah.
Well,
that's what they've been told.
Set up for lawyers originally. They were set up for people just like the common man, you and me, to go into a place and have a hearing.
Yep. Let's talk some more about this way of doing things, guys. If you've been following this is our third show on this. Bill and Matt is going to be doing some courses, or like some talks in the Dad Talk Today support group every week. So make sure that you're going over there, and we're probably going to be coming on like once a week on here. So you're probably going to hear us talk about a lot of this over and over again, because each time we do this, there's new people that are coming in and need to know about this. In order for this to create the change that we are looking for, that is needed, it's going to have to happen in volume. We need a lot of people doing this to affect the courts. And guys, I mean, this really is, when they talk about going from the bottom up, that is it. I wish it was as easy as, I'm going to go attend CPAC and get a conversation with one of my legislators, and tomorrow he's going to pass a law and all this is, completely over. And I wish it worked that way, guys. It's just not. And then most of those guys that you're going to, they've got their hands in the cookie jar. I mean, and this is where you got to start it. So this course is so important, but we've got to get you guys going through it, and we need to get the word out there. The more people that you can talk to, the more we can spread this, the quicker we can get it going. But guys, tell everybody about that might just, be tuning in. This is their first time they've got to hear about it. Tell them about Alienation Academy, how they can join, and what's included in it.
Bill, you wanna step up on this one?
This is exclusive for Dad Talk only. First of all, I want you to be aware of that. It's we have what we do. Obviously, like anybody, is got a financial value that we need in order for us to live and eat. We do not bill our clients. We never have, but and the amount that people contribute, we're a contribution model, not a billing model, is substantial. But we decided that in this case, we were going to give away our program. And in consideration for a contribution, which will help with this groundswell, organizing this groundswell of people throughout the world that we need right now. Today, we need it. So we need thousands of people to sign up for and to enroll. And alienationacademy.org is where you can go online, alienationacademy.org. And what that will do is for a mere $50 contribution, you will get what we typically have been, people have been contributing up to around $3,000 for, just for the courses. That doesn't count, the other services that we provide that are premium services. But this is really the only way I know to make this work is we have to get these courses in the hands of everybody as fast as possible.
Eric, I equate it to, you can't have a religion without a Bible or a Quran or whatever written material it is. In this case, you can't have a movement if everyone's kind of willy-nilly doing their own thing and repressing their own understanding. It really needs to be training involved in order to get this groundswell. Everybody needs to be singing from the same hymnal. And in this case, learning theory is the hymnal. It's based on common sense. It's based on, human evolution, whatever time period you want to apply to that. We have evolved socially. And so this describes all of that, and it puts it in terms that are relevant and important, which is alienation. That's what we're here to talk about. Bill and I would love to sit down and talk to you about the politics of the day and all this other stuff. But, the fact is, your problem right now is the fact you're not seeing your children, and your children are being abused by a court system that's been allowed to run amok for far too long. Bill talked about 10 years. I've been at this for 30. I'm Bill's monkey, I guess, in a way. It's he can pull from my lived experiences in family court, but it's absolutely right. The last 10 years is when it's really ramped up, and more specifically, the last 2, it's gotten really, really bad. We're seeing things coming out of these courts that we would never have seen before. And I can only conclude that since it's getting worse, that train is not going to slow down. So we need an army of parent soldiers to stand up against this wave of government intrusion into the family and say, no, enough is enough. We're done. This is how we are going to run things. And this is why we're going to run it the way that we are. It's based on sound scientific principles of learning theory. This is about the human condition. What is required from a fit parenting perspective to raise a child successfully into adulthood? And oh, by the way, Mr. Administrative person, judge, or whatever you are, your solution ain't working, because we know the numbers. We know the teen suicides. We know the divorce rates. We know, the the inability of today's generation to effectively create and maintain a relationship with someone else in their lives. We know that sex robots are now coming onto the scene. For God's sakes, how far are we going to allow this to devolve before we stand up in unity and say, we're done, enough?
That's going to be a big problem too. Those robots.
Yeah.
People laugh
Yeah.
about it now, but with the way that, this current generation is going, I think it's going to be a much, much bigger issue than anyone thinks.
Yeah.
I mean,
You're absolutely right.
They've done a great job at tearing apart the family. And this is why we had values, guys. We got to get back to that. The best thing for a child would be to have both parents in the home, getting along, loving, have mom and dad. Unfortunately, there's going to be times where, divorce is just going to happen, and it doesn't need to be the battlefield that they have made it. And the only way we're going to be able to reshape this, guys, is, I think Ronald Reagan himself, y'all's former governor, former president of the United States, said the scariest thing that he had ever heard was, "Hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help."
Yet he's the one that started no-fault divorce.
He later said that was the worst thing he did when he was in office.
Yeah. But that just goes to show you the effect of politicians on this problem. They don't.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, man. I mean, that's the thing, guys. The answer is going to have to be started with us. So get out there, alienationacademy.org. We're going to be coming on more, talking about this. I'll let you know sometime next week. You guys got a plan on when you're talking about doing a live in the support group this week?
I think we've had this week. I think we're at Friday, Bill. We're going to post that up on the courses. We had 2 on Saturday. That's the struggle for us, is trying to figure out what's going to be best for. We have to kind of look at where the students are from generally at that point.
Yeah.
Do we have, a bunch of them from the West Coast and a few of them from the East Coast right now?
Yeah.
But again, we'll do as much as we need to in order to get, people comfortable with the message and test their level of understanding on this. It's sound science, folks, and it's like Bill said, it's the only thing that's going to work. You got 2 paths to take. 1, their path, and 2, the new path, which isn't such the new path, actually. The new path actually has been here since before the current path. This is based on science that's been well articulated in scientific literature for the past 150 years, dating back to William James. B.F. Skinner, God, who else? Bill Volpe and others have studied behaviorism. We know the impact of this. We know we're pretty simple creatures, really, human beings. We're not as complex as we think we are. But we've allowed a system to integrate itself into our families, and it's time to say no in a unified voice. And that's what the courses will give you, is the ability to have a unified message that's based on sound scientific principles. The data you collect is the highest standard of evidence there is. It meets both the Daubert and the Fry standard and the federal rules, all 3 actually. So, and for $50, you're getting a whole lot of value. Seriously, 51 hours of courses, one-on-ones with Bill and I. It's a big deal. We are committed to making sure we've got, I'd like to see this time next year 1 million people trained in learning theory, and they're having communications on Dad Talk about,
Courts wouldn't know what to do with it, man.
Yeah, about their observation strategies, and then collectively, the courts have to sit up and take notice, and the legislators. They're on to us, guys. We better change, because they're going to come for us with pitchforks. That's kind of what we need to do in this. We're at that point in time in history right now where that's what needs to occur.
Yeah. And guys, we still have, for it's $50, one-time thing, but for some of you who might be, facing some challenges right now, we still have a few more sponsorships to give out. So if you can't afford it and you're just in that pinch, but you need this course, go on alienationacademy.org. There's a sponsorship application, and we have gave away several free courses, guys. And as I get, donors that come up and say, hey, I want to sponsor another parent, that's what we're going to try to do. So we're doing everything we can to give you the tools that's needed, but you've got to be the one to go and do the work and to sign up. Okay. Yeah. So let's get out there and do that. Yeah. Well, go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say that's a really important point. Is this is a commitment. You hate to harp on this, but it really, in order to make a difference in your own case, you have to be mindful of others' cases. And if you're going to be part of an army, you can't be the one person in the army that doesn't shine their boots or their buckle and never has their weapon cleaned. You need to make sure that you're putting in the work and the effort, because the person to your left and the person to your right are depending upon you to do that. So if you join the courses, put the effort into it, you will benefit. This will change your life. Honestly, it will change your life. And you're going to learn something, and we're going to put you through the gauntlet here. You're going to have to gather up some data, and that data is central to your case in court. We'll teach you how to, participate in court effectively. We've got, God, Bill, what is it? 12 hours court rehearsals.
We offer 12 hours to rehearse.
Yeah, 12 hours of court rehearsals in this course alone. It's crazy. So again, 51 hours. Everybody needs to be trained up in learning theory, singing from the same hymnal to affect real change in the system.
There you go. All right, guys. Well, you guys have a good Sunday, and let's do it again sometime this week. Watch out on the pages, guys, and I'll let you know when we're coming back on.
Thank you.